Constitution? Well, the framers feared a president might corrupt our elections by dragging foreign powers into our politics in order to promote the personal political ambitions of the president above the rule of law and above the national security. The framers set against a potential tyrant's boundless thirst for power the people's representatives here in Congress and the people's own democratic ambitions, our self-respect, our love of freedom and the rule of law, our fierce constitutional patriotism. Now, it looked like President Trump might get away with his Ukraine shakedown. After all, most Americans didn't know anything about it, and the few who learned of it would be too afraid, too intimidated to cross the most powerful man on earth. President Trump could rest easy. But if Donald Trump misjudged the American character, the framers of our Constitution did not. I count 17 honorable public servants who came forward to testify over the intimidation and disparagement of the president. Is that right, Mr. Goldman?
Yes, there were 17.
And I count a dozen career State Department and national security officials who served Republican and Democratic presidents alike over decades who came to testify. In fact, 4 of President Trump's own National Security Council staffers, Hill, Vindman, Morrison, and McGuire, came forward to report Trump's scheme to NSC lawyers as soon as they learned of it. Didn't they, Mr. Goldman?
Morrison and Vindman went to the lawyers as soon as they learned of it, yes.
They went to the lawyers. And that moved me a lot because my father was a staffer on the National Security Council under President Kennedy. And he said the most important thing you can bring to work with you every day is your conscience. And he devoted his career to the idea that people must speak truth to power when power becomes a clear and present danger to democracy and to the people. So I want to talk about 2 of the many honorable government witnesses who went under oath and stood up for the truth. Mr. Goldman, who is Dr. Fiona Hill?
Dr. Fiona Hill was the senior director for the Europe and Russia Directorate at the National Security Council until July of this year.
And she was President Trump's senior advisor on Russia?
Correct.
Her family had fled both Nazi Germany and Soviet Russia?
I think her family actually came from England. It was Marie Yovanovitch who had...
that was Ambassador Yovanovitch. Yes. Dr. Hill voiced her concerns to the NSC's lawyers on July 10 and July 11th, long before anyone on this committee knew about it. Why did she go to report what she had learned? What motivated her?
She was concerned that Ambassador Sondland and Mick Mulvaney were entering into essentially a transaction whereby the Ukrainians would open up these investigations for President Trump's political interests in return for getting the White House meeting that President Trump had offered.
And I want to talk about Deputy Assistant Secretary George Kent, who served as a career Foreign Service officer for more than 27 years under 5 different presidents, Democrats and Republicans alike. And he wrote or updated notes to file on 4 different occasions to record his grave contemporaneous concerns about the president's conduct. Mr. Goldman, what were the events that led Mr. Kent to draft these notes to his file?
There were several. There was a conversation at the end of June where several American officials had indicated to President Zelensky that he needed to go forward with these investigations. There was one on August 16th, I recall, that he talked about. But you bring up a very important point, which is all of these State Department witnesses in particular, and frankly almost all of the witnesses other than Ambassador Sondland, took unbelievable meticulous notes. I would have dreamed for a witness like that as a prosecutor. And it makes for a very clear and compelling record and clear and compelling evidence that's based on contemporaneous notes.
So do we have Mr. Kent's notes in this process?
We have no State Department records, including these memos to file, the notes, Ambassador Taylor's first-person cable, and emails. There's so many documents that the few that we have gotten have been so helpful to the investigation.
Why do we not have them?
The State Department refused to provide them, notwithstanding our subpoena, under the President's direction.
You know, in authoritarian societies like Putin's Russia or the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, people are terrified to speak out about the crimes of their political leaders. But in the United States, a lot of people are not afraid, even though President Trump has tried to intimidate or silence them. And he is trying to make our country more like Russia, and we can be thankful that you found a lot of heroes who stood up for the truth in our Constitution. I yield back.